I thought I knew what good tom yum tasted like. We've eaten a lot of tom yum over the years, and we have our favourite places here in Phuket. But last night we came to this little restaurant in Samkong and tried something that made me think about tom yum in a completely different way. Because these weren't just two bowls of tom yum, they were two completely different takes on the same dish. And it got me wondering, how much can one bowl of tom yum really tell us about the dish? So, what is tom yum? At its simplest, tom yum is a famous Thai hot and sour soup, traditionally built around aromatic ingredients like lemongrass, galangal, kaffir lime leaves and chili, with lime adding that distinctive sourness. But tom yum isn't one fixed recipe. You can have different proteins, different levels of heat, clear or richer broths, and different balances of sour, spicy, salty and aromatic flavours. And there's something else that's important: the person making it. Two chefs can use many of the same ingredients and still produce two very different bowls of tom yum. And that's exactly what we discovered when we went looking for it here in Phuket. So let's start with where this whole idea began, here in Samkong. We came here simply wanting some tom yum. But when we looked at the menu, we found a lot of different versions. Some with a more modern twist, which we hadn't seen before at our regular tom yum place. Two particular ones caught our attention. The first was an extra spicy version with pork bone and minced pork.
You had minced pork with it as well?
Just under the surface of the broth were the thin rice noodles Nat had chosen, one of many different varieties available. Nat mentioned the portion size was very good, having two large pieces of bone, each piece having plenty of pork meat plus a good helping of pork mince. But underneath the heat was a rich, savoury broth with plenty of flavour.
Tomato yours, just tried
Just extra spicy.
extra spicy.
This was seriously spicy, coming from the extra curry paste, giving it an almost tomatoey flavour, but still allowing the pork to come through in the broth. The meat on the bone just fell apart, so tender. Along with the meats there was a hard-boiled egg and deep-fried wonton wrappers, but no bean sprouts or other ingredients like fish cakes that are often found in tom yum. Then we tried something completely different. This one came with crispy chicken and bacon. What a great combination of flavours. Even the soup itself was noticeably different from the first dish. Nat had ordered the pork bone broth with milk, whereas this one was without milk. So a lot more clearer, fresher, lighter flavour.
To the shop we normally go at. Very different indeed. That's really nice.
Still with a kick of spice, but a much more toned down kick.
You can taste soup, Mike.
Got a kick to it.
I decided to go for the flatter, wider, yellow noodles, allowing more of the broth to be carried on the noodle with each mouthful. Again, my broth had no additional ingredients like bean sprouts, which I actually liked and felt that overall the dishes didn't need any more.
That soup's lovely. Tastes nice. Yeah.
Honestly, we both enjoyed both dishes, and the presentation of the dishes were very appealing, making you want to dive in straight away. I'm looking forward to trying more of their menu on future visits. After trying those two very different bowls in Samkong, we decided to continue our little Tom Yum journey and see what we'd find somewhere else. So the following day we headed over to Kathu to try another restaurant that we'd been told makes a lot of its food from scratch. But before we came here, I did something I think most of us do these days. I checked the reviews. And I have to admit, some of them didn't exactly fill me with confidence. There were quite a few people, particularly non-Thais, who weren't impressed with the Tom Yum. Some described it as being too sour with too much vinegar. And if I'd relied on those reviews alone, I probably wouldn't have come here. But that's exactly what got me thinking, because what if the food someone else doesn't enjoy is actually something you really love? Well, there was only one way for us to find out. We ordered 3 versions of the Tom Yum. The first bowl was a clear, spicy Tom Yum with pork, minced pork, pork meatballs and fish cakes. I also chose the homemade flat noodle, and you could really tell that they were made here. There were bean sprouts in the bowl as well, and what stood out immediately was the flavour of the broth.
Different flavour from last night, but really nice. I'm getting some lime in there.
There was a noticeable combination of black pepper, lime and vinegar, giving it a stronger, more pronounced sourness than the Tom Yum we'd had in Samkong.
Those are nice. You can tell they're homemade.
But for me, it wasn't too sour at all. I actually really like black pepper and lime. So those flavours worked particularly well for my palate, and despite the stronger soup base, you could still taste the pork coming through. You can also add other ingredients here, including things like offal, liver, depending on what you prefer. The second dish used many of the same ingredients, but this time we went for a dry version of Tom Yum. Rather than having everything sitting in a bowl of broth, the noodles and ingredients are served dry, with a savoury soup served separately. And even without the usual Tom Yum broth surrounding everything, those familiar flavours were still there. For me, that combination of black pepper and lime was still very noticeable.
Oh, that's really good. That's really delicious. That one's really good.
This style of Tom Yum goes back a long way, and it was interesting to see how much of that familiar flavour remained even when the dish is served dry.
Oh, that's got a nice peppery flavour.
But there was something else that made this bowl particularly special for Nat. She said it reminded her of a dish she used to eat when she was at university in Bangkok, travelling home by train. She hadn't found one like this for more than 20 years, and she said it was the first one she'd had in all that time that reminded her so much of the one she remembered. The third bowl was different again, this time a vegetable and pork tom yum without noodles. It was simply the soup, vegetables and a selection of pork, plus this time it was served with a side of boiled rice.
Chili.
So this one you're supposed to eat with the rice
Yeah.
rather than have noodle with it. So you can have tom yum with rice,
Yeah.
even as a soup, without the noodle.
You can order for Thai say gao lao. This means vegetable, and then you eat with rice.
But once again the flavours were noticeably different from the other versions, and by this point I was starting to realise just how much tom yum can change depending on who's preparing it and the recipe they're following.
Completely different by having with the rice. Nice flavour on all of them. There's a really nice, very nice flavour, lime base. I can taste lime in there. That's lovely. That's really, really delicious. What meatballs are these? Pork? Pork meatballs.
What I found particularly interesting about the tom yum here is that it has a much stronger, more traditional character than some of the versions we're more familiar with today.
For me, I prefer this.
You like the dry one?
The herbs and spices create a much more pronounced flavour, and I can understand why it might not suit everyone's palate. But that's really the point. It doesn't necessarily mean the tom yum is good or bad. It's simply a different style, and whether you enjoy it comes down to your own taste.
People just careful because this the chili rice she make by self. This spicy.
This is a style that may appeal to people looking for a more traditional character and stronger herbal and spicy flavours. So, after trying 5 different bowls of tom yum from just 2 restaurants, I think I've come away with a very different view of this dish. Not one of them tasted the same.
As well. Oh, it smells delicious.
And I honestly couldn't tell you which one was the best. They all had their own character, their own balance of flavours and their own way of being prepared. And that brings me back to those reviews I mentioned earlier. Some people didn't enjoy the tom yum here because they found it too sour, but I actually really enjoyed the sourness, and neither of us is right or wrong.
You make them yourself?
They simply have a different palate to mine, and I think that's something worth remembering when reading restaurant reviews. A review can tell you what someone else experienced, but it can't tell you what you're going to taste. I've avoided places myself because someone else didn't like the food, and now I realise that probably wasn't the best way to look at it. Because the only real way to know whether you're going to like something is to try it for yourself. So don't judge your tom yum experience on someone else's bowl.
Soup's really good. Yeah, really nice.